want to thank NASMA for hosting us again this year, and thank the sponsors again for making this event free and available for all of y'all to attend. All of these presentations will be available again on the EDDMapS website and the NASMA YouTube channel after the presentations are over, or in the next couple of weeks. So with that, let's dive right in. We've got a great agenda, and hopefully y'all will learn a lot. Keep the questions coming in the chat or in the questions section, and we'll either answer those after each talk or at the end of the day as part of the questions part. So I wanted to start off and kind of give us a overview of EDDMapS and some of the new things that we've done in the past year and are planning. And then later we're going to talk about things we're planning to do and where we're going with it. But I'm, as Belle said, the director of the University of Georgia Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health, or Bugwood as we're sometimes known as. We are a collaboration between the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences and the School of Forestry and Natural Resources at the University of Georgia. And we focus on projects related to invasive species, integrated pest management, and forest health. And as with our EDDMapS program, a lot of what we do is focused on information technology and providing tools for the public, for scientists and professionals. And doing that requires a lot of partnerships. And we're located in South Georgia, but we work all over the US and in Canada and Mexico. And unlike a lot of university-based centers, we are strictly focused on outreach and extensions. Our mission is to build these partnerships and provide information technologies, tools, as well as the training to go along with those. And yeah, that does sometimes require some research to figure out the best solution for problems, but we're not focused on that research part of the land grant system. We're focused on the outreach part. I'm going to start off and I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to EDDMapS in case we have some new users here. And then I'm going to look at where we've been over the past year, some recent updates, and then how we took the feedback we got last year to help come up with today's agenda. What is EDDMapS? EDDMapS stands for Early Detection and Distribution Mapping Center System, although we really don't even use that anymore, but that's where the name came from. It was built with really four main goals. We wanted a way to do real-time tracking of invasive species and pest occurrences. We wanted a way to have maps and distribution information that would work both at the local level and at the national and even international level, and then provide a way to do electronic early detection and rapid response by taking systems that were normally done by phone calls or emails and making all of that integrated, and then tying that to our already existing library of images through invasive.org, through forestry images, through the Bugwood image system, and resources tied to those images. So all of that kind of gets packaged together. And we did this with the idea that we wanted to make it easy. We wanted to make invasive species mapping as easy as possible so we could increase the public awareness of the invasive species issue, facilitate that local early detection and rapid response, but then move out to the landscape size scale and be able to aggregate data from a lot of different sources into one place. And then now that all that data is coming together, be able to show change over time to better tell the story of invasive species management. And you're going to learn more about that through the different talks today. And then have that EDDMapS core as a platform for additional applications. And I'm going to talk about some of those additional applications this afternoon. When we're talking about EDDMapS and we're talking about data, what kind of data are we talking about? And it's fairly simple. It's what did you see? Who are you? Where did you see it? When did you see it? How much did you see? Do you know why it was there? And when did you see it? And how much of it was there? And so whether that is an insect, an animal, or a plant infestation, these are the core concepts. And so when we're talking about data, this is what we're talking about, and this is the scope of what we're talking about. And so we really tried to break down each early detection and rapid response action, and then what kind of information was needed. And so we started out and we said, okay, what species needed to be reported? What do we need to make it as easy as possible for users to be able to report new things as well as things that are pretty well established? And how, what tools can they use to be able to report those things? And then once it goes into the system, who has jurisdiction? And then let's look at it and see, okay, is this something new to the county, new to the state, new to the US or Canada, even new to North America? And then let's do an assessment on that and go, okay, is the identification of what the person reported it as correct? Has a risk assessment for this species been done? And if so, what kind of management options are available? And then once there are management options available, how do we document that? And how do we document whether or not it was effective? So all of this, goes in to the background of when you pick up your phone and you take an app and you take a picture and you report it through the system. And to have a background from that, we started out by collecting, and we're still collecting, as much distribution data as we could from all different sources: USDA Plants Database, the Forest Service Forest Inventory and Analysis System. Anybody that had data related to invasive species, we took that data, pulled it together, and added it into one single database. And by doing that, we've been able to collect a lot of data across the US and Canada. And this just kind of gives you an idea of the 6 million records within EDDMapS, where those records are located throughout the US and Canada. And obviously, some of the larger counties, some of the larger jurisdictions are going to show more data, but it's a pretty good view of where data is across the US and Canada. And so I've talked a lot about the early detection rapid response stage of the invasion curve, but with what we're going to show you today and what we're moving toward, we're focusing more on this. We've built the tools for the first part, and now we're building and improving the tools for the second part. For once something is established, how do you manage it? How do you document that management? And how do you adapt over time as you're in that establishment phase? And then once all this data is collected and put in this database, how do we use what is called the FAIR data standards to make sure that data is easily available to managers, to researchers, to modelers, to whoever needs to use that data and integrate it into whatever system they have? And there's a lot of ways to do data, and what we're trying to do and are doing with EDDMapS is providing a platform that's focused on invasive species and pest data, and then can be integrated with your other data systems that exist. And we're doing that by thinking about what the audience is, who is using this data, and adapting the tools and the interfaces for those different users. And so if it's a casual user who needs a field guide, then there's the EDDMapS app and website. If it's a more professional user, they don't need the field guide, they're collecting a lot of data, they want the most efficient way of doing that, then it's the EDDMapS Pro app. We're capturing data for iNaturalists, for the public that are just reporting things they see and they may happen to be invasives. And so we're taking that and pulling that out. We built the Wild Spotter app as a tool to document invasive species on Forest Service and other public lands. And then we're providing these data downloads that Rebecca is going to talk about later as a way for researchers to take the data and do something with it. And we've come a long way. Since EDDMapS started in 2005, 2006, the website is drastically different, and we launched the I've Got One app, which was the first smartphone app we did for reporting in Florida in 2011, and that has now grown to a whole suite of apps. for different purposes. And what we've really been trying to consolidate over the last few years, and we talked about this a lot last year, is initially EDDMapS was really working with regional or state networks and building apps or building tools that would work for that region or that state. And because of the overhead that that takes to maintain over time, we decided let's roll everything into one EDDMapS app and start retiring these older apps. And we're still in the process of doing that and getting users over to the EDDMapS platform, the EDDMapS app platform. And what we've done with the EDDMapS app is the first thing that happens when you open that app is it asks you what state or province you're in. And so by doing that, we're able to tailor the species list to that particular area that you're reporting in. So while we had these apps focused on different regions, and we did that because the species vary from region to region, obviously. And by allowing the user to choose a state, then they're able to get species as well as field guides that are tailored to the area of the country that they're in. And by doing this, we're also able to push updates to the app. So each time you open that app, it goes and it says, hey, server, do we have any new species to add today? And server says yes, and server says no. And if it says yes, it downloads those new species onto the phone. So you've got those additional species without us having to push an update to the App Store. And we're also working with some of our partners to incorporate custom branding into the app. So when you go into the EDDMapS app, you still get your state or your area's logo, you still get that look and feel, but it's through the EDDMapS platform. And then there's the EDDMapS Pro app, and we're going to talk about that off and on a lot today. That app allows you to do what we call revisits, to go back to an area and provide more information about the infestation at that area. It allows you to do a lot of things offline, have background maps that are offline. It allows you to do custom querying, saving those custom queries, and allows you to pull in a lot of information. And a lot more I'm going to talk about as we go through this, but this is really our flagship tool and our professional tool. And I want to make sure as we talk about EDDMapS that we're not just talking about an app, we're talking about a program. And the reason that it's more than just an app is because of the educational and outreach side of it. We work very closely with our partners to meet their needs and adapt the programs that we have to meet what they need. And so we've started this annual summit. We're going to talk later about doing monthly office hours. You know, we do in-person presentations as well as virtual presentations, and we have a good library of PDF and PowerPoint presentations that you can take and train your local audiences. And so you don't even need us to be involved. And I just want to make sure that that is part of this conversation as we go through this. So where are we today? We consider EDDMapS the ultimate aggregator, pulling all this data together, tools both at the national, state, and regional level, all the way down to a local SISMA level. And we're really trying to shift our focus. We've built the tools for data collection. Now we're focused on how you, our users, can use these tools to solve your problems on a daily basis. So how's it going? What's the data look like for the last year? We had almost 4,000 different individuals or different organizations reporting into EDDMapS last year. 175,000 new reports came through the system, and we averaged 479 new reports each and every day coming into EDDMapS, covering about 1,000 species during that time. And then here is that map that we saw earlier, but adapted to where data came in 2021 and viewing it from that perspective. And then what kind of data we're getting? You know, obviously a large chunk of that is positive data, but we're increasingly seeing, and over the last year, about 40% of the data was negative data. And then the important piece in my mind is that 14% of data that is treated data, where we had documented that something was done to that infestation, either as the report came in or later as part of a revisit. We're still seeing a majority of the data coming in through the website, but also through the smartphone and both iPhone and Android apps, as well as through our APIs. We pull data from other systems like iNaturalist. And then still about 17% of the data is coming in through bulk sources where somebody collects data in another data system and then sends it to us to incorporate. A large percentage, over 80% of the data coming in, is focused on plants, but we've still got that chunk of insects, a smaller chunk of wildlife, and then just right under 1% of plant pathogens and animal pathogens included in there as well. So what I was interested in is, okay, we know we've got a lot of plant data, but let's dive deeper into the non-plant data and see what that data is made up of. And so we've got a huge portion of that data that is focused on piercing and sucking insects, and that is because there's a network called the Suction Trap Network that takes and traps different insect species, and that data is all going into EDDMapS. So we know that's there, but then once you go past that, then you really see, okay, there's the foliage feeding insects. That makes sense. There's a lot of those that are pests and invasive species, and then the reptiles. But it's interesting to see things like, worms and leeches, as well as birds showing up on and fish showing up on this list of species that are coming in through the system last year. And one thing I'm really proud of when I ran this number is 97% of the records in EDDMapS have been verified. So we know there's cases where data comes in and the verifier is not as active and it doesn't get verified quickly, but throughout the entire system, over 97% of the data has been verified. And that is because of our great network of verifiers across the country. We're over 800 now that get those emails when the data comes in, and they go through and verify that data and decide, okay, yes, this is what it is, or this is not what it is, and this record needs to be removed or deleted from the system. Looking at data by state, and obviously you're going to hear from some folks from Utah and Minnesota. We heard from some of our partners in Ontario last year, but we really can see that the states and the provinces that have very active programs and doing a lot of promotion is where a lot of the data is coming in from, and then that kind of tracks down depending on different projects and different areas of the country. But a good distribution throughout a lot of the states, and that this continues to change and is not always the same every year. This year I included both original reports and revisits, so you kind of get that concept of both, new data coming in, whether it be a revisit or a point. We talked a lot last year about the iNaturalist import routine and how we're triaging that data, the research grade data from iNaturalist, and that's coming into EDDMapS, and we've moved over 400,000 records from the iNaturalist system into EDDMapS, and then our verifiers have said about 200,000 of those records do not need to be there, and so they've been ignored, and our species that individual state is not tracking or working with for different reasons. So some of the recent updates that we've done, one of the things we've done, and I've mentioned this a few times, is we've taken what was EDDMapS was really a US focused system from the main website, and now we've integrated both the Alberta and Ontario EDDMapS systems into the main EDDMapS site. So all of the maps now show both the US and Canada, and all of the maps through EDDMapS have been updated to show that change, and we're continuing to work with different partners to expand EDDMapS into more of the Canadian provinces as well. We've also updated all of the point maps, and one of the big things we did as part of that, Canada Thistle's got the most records in EDDMapS, and if you would go to this page, it would take you a few minutes for all these records, over 200,000 records, to load. And we decided to cache those large data sets, and so now that data for Canada Thistle and the other species that have a lot of records all come through and are available almost instantly when you open that page. We've also changed the clustering from just showing clusters to showing these pie charts, so you get an idea of where things are positive versus treated or eradicated. So really, again, working on changing that story of what clustering looks like within we replaced Google Maps with OpenStreetMaps. This was done because Google started charging for views on their maps. And so as we want to expand and allow EDDMapS to be embedded in other websites and news articles and other places, this way we don't get a surprise with a high bill 1 month because this map got included in a newspaper article that went viral and it shows up and gets a lot of traffic. I think this is the OpenStreetMap platform allows for us to do a lot of things we were not able to do on Google Maps. And it's just a little bit different look of a map, but it still has the satellite imagery. It still has a couple of different terrain views that you can look at and still see the data in those different platforms. Once you click on a record and you go to the individual species, this record detail page, as we call it, has been updated and really enhanced to show very quickly the original record, the current status of that species, and any revisits that have been done on it. And we've kept this view as Google Maps in order for you to be able to do stuff like the Google Maps Street View. So you can go and actually look and see exactly where that species is, especially if it's close to a road and the Google Street View is available. Another thing we've done, and this was done to help just standardize across all of EDDMapS, but also help our colorblind users to be able to see the differences between the colors. We've gone to a standard color palette for all of our points on our maps, whether they be in the apps or on the website. And you'll start seeing this consistently of all the reds will be this red, all of the yellows, all the greens, blues, etc. One of the huge tasks last year was working with revisits. Revisits were initially done as a separate table within our database, which means they didn't necessarily have all the information that an original record did. And so they were a separate concept. And so we took those records and moved them back into the primary mapping table, which gives us a lot more capabilities to do some really cool things and keep up with things better over time and track things better over time. And so that was a huge lift in the last year that has now been integrated across the system. I mentioned EDDMapS Pro a lot. We've really worked on this interface in the last year, adding some new sections, custom data sets, offline road maps, which allow you to zoom in closer, as well as the monitoring zones that we're going to talk about later. We've included a key to what each of the different colors mean for the different markers on the map and integrated documentation within the system to give us a better way, for users to understand what the different icons and all mean within the app. This is the tool for revisits. This is how the easiest way for you to go on and download data for the area you work in and mark something as treated, and document that change over time. Mention the offline maps, both the aerial maps and the street maps, and we put together this graphic of where we've created those offline maps for. So the orange states are where those have been created. If working with EDDMapS Pro and you need offline maps for your individual counties, then please reach out to us and we will make sure that those get processed and get added for your counties. Photo projects, we continue to improve in EDDMapS. This really is a great tool that you're going to hear a little bit about throughout the day, but a way to show that before and after picture and show how things have changed and line them up very easily, as well as incorporating KML underlays, project area maps that can go in and go under the point, so you can see, like in the bluish purple here, an area of where the project is, so you can make sure that you're working on points within that area. Some other cool stuff that's been added to EDDMapS Pro, being able to navigate through Google Maps or Apple Maps directly to a point. For verifiers, being able to do verification directly in the app, as well as contest a record if something is not what it was originally, if you think something's wrong there. Mentioned videos. We've added a good set of videos to show different tasks within EDDMapS Pro, and those are all available through the website. We've also been looking at the data a lot and going, okay, let's take a species like kudzu. How have our maps changed since we originally launched the system to now? And so here's an example of what kudzu distribution looked like in 2006, what it looks like today, and then using some of the climate maps, what the potential for the spread of the species is. And so this can really give you a good perspective of how far we've come and where we may be going. We've also been taking habitat suitability maps and underlaying those on the map. And here's one we did for a stink bug, as well as one we did working with the Midwest Invasive Plant Network to take and do habitat suitability maps, in this case for tree of heaven, and then show what areas would be suitable for tree of heaven, and then have that under the actual EDDMapS distribution map. Added some other map types for different applications, whether they be grid maps, looking at previous year versus current year, time-lapse maps with linked graphs to tell more of the story. We've split up the EDDMapS tools and training page into 2 separate pages to make the materials more accessible. And we're continuing the QA/QC through emails that are sent to us to look for mistakes, have ways to fix bad shapes, have ways to correct data downloads that may fail, and in other ways just to make sure the data coming in is looking the way it should. We also added in the last couple of years the protected area database from USGS. So when a record goes into EDDMapS, if it was found on National Park Service land, Forest Service land, or BLM land, or any state lands, then it's automatically geo-referenced to that, and that shows up as part of the. Real quick, and I'm already over time, but one of the things that we did in preparing for today is we took the feedback from last year's summit. We had 36 different speakers and panelists talking about a lot of topics. All of that data is available both on NASMA's website, NASMA's YouTube channel, and the EDDMapS website. We really listened to what you said, and what kind of additional training materials did you want? Videos. So that's why we've created these videos for EDDMapS Pro, and are going to create them for the other tools. Short, very to the point videos to help you remember what you may have learned in a training. We also know that you were interested in, so you're already tracking management activities electronic, but a lot of you want to be. So we're going to continue to talk more about the ISM track and the other tools to help track management activities. We realized that a lot of people weren't signed up for alerts. And so one of the things we did was make sure that one of the talks today is about EDDMapS alerts and how you sign up for them, so you can learn and be alerted when something new is. About half of you knew how to query data, but we're going to go more in depth into that today to really give you an overview of how you can use the data from EDDMapS, as well as view it in different ways. So looking at today's agenda, we've got a great lineup of speakers. After I finish here, then Joe LaForest is going to talk about a completely new concept in EDDMapS called projects, and how you can use them and how they work, and how they can help you manage your data. And this has been something our users have asked for a lot. And so we're really excited about kind of starting to launch that today. And then the only recorded presentation today, Tricia Becky with the Morton Arboretum, who was not able to be with us this week. She pre-recorded her presentation, but she's going to talk about a really cool thing that they've been doing with monitoring for spotted lanternfly and documenting tree of heaven better in Illinois. And so very good tool there that I think will be applicable to a lot of the users, a lot of other states as well. And then Jerry Caldwell with Tooele County, Utah, and Monica Chandler with Minnesota Department of Agriculture are going to talk about pros and cons of using points and polygons, and how people have thought about this and spent a lot of time thinking about why we should use points or why we should use polygons, so you don't have to. And so we're really, those back-to-back presentations are going to be a good overview of those concepts. And then Rebecca Wallace is going to talk about downloads, alerts, save queries, how you get the data out. We're going to take a short break, and then Aaron Eager with Utah Department of Agriculture and Food is going to talk at the state level, how can you use data and how powerful data can really be. And then Justin Bush with the Washington Invasive Species Council is going to take things and go back and look at all taxa. You know, how can we mobilize the public to report all taxa? And they've got some really interesting stories on things that have happened in Washington over the last few years. Rebecca's going to come back and she's going to talk about verification tools and how verification works and different enhancements to that for our verifiers. I'm going to wrap up with some of the next steps, things that we're doing, things that we're going to be doing, and how we plan on improving customer support in the future. So I'm a few minutes over, but we're going to switch now to Joe, and he's going to talk about projects.